Come in and craft with me. I'm Joey with Created in Awe. Today we have a wood kit from Rust-Covered Cottage. It is part of my Farmhouse Charm by Joey collection, the Oh Holy Night Nativity set. Can't wait to show it to you. So we'll start with those wood pieces that I've already shown you, but I gave everything a coat of clear matte sealer. Specifically the Oh Holy Night music, I gave 2 solid coats to. And then now we're going to go ahead and get started with the painting process. We have Waverly paint in Plaster, Maize, and also antique wax. We'll start by painting that Oh Holy Night back piece. So it is to look like sheet music, and I'm going to start off with the plaster paint a little bit and about half as much or so of water. I just wanted to thin it down, give it more of a stained white look rather than a solid, because we will be distressing this again later anyway. So I'm mixing that water and the paint together. Once it's thoroughly mixed, I'm going to grab a sponge dauber and a paper towel so that I can get just a small amount of paint applied at one time. I'll do a couple of thin coats of that plaster paint so that we can build up the color and hopefully not fill in those gorgeous etched lines. So I'm going to put some on my sponge dauber and dab off the excess onto the paper towel. So there's just a little bit on there. And I'll just gently swipe across. I really just want to hit the high points and not into those etched lines. So I'll be getting little amounts on my sponge at a time, dabbing it off, and we'll do the whole thing. And I did this twice because I didn't want a really thin coat where the wood grain was coming through. As it turns out at the end, I probably would have been fine with that because I'm going to add some wax to it anyway, so you don't really have to do 2 coats, but that's what I did. So we'll skip ahead. So after I have applied all the paint, I'll set that aside to dry, and we are going to work on the hay or thatched roof. I want this to still be distressed but have a slight yellow tone to it, so I've got the Maize paint now, and I just put some water on my sponge dauber. It can be thicker, it doesn't need to be completely watered down, and I just spread that over the front piece. Once that's done, we will again set this piece aside to dry, and we're going to work on the pieces that attach to the front and are going to be the base that I want to be in a stained look. Everything else, you know, we did all the painting. Now we're just going to do the antique wax staining. So we have the wreath, we have the Holy Family, and we have the 2 pieces for the base that goes underneath everything. So I'm going to get those adjusted, and we'll use straight antique wax, no watering it down for the Holy Family piece. I want this to have a really dark coat. I almost wish I had gone in with a little bit of black instead so it looks more like a silhouette, but I do like the fact that, and you'll see at the end, that everything that is dark has that same stained look to it. So I've got my sponge dauber, straight antique wax, and we will just start going over that Holy Family piece. And I want it to be thick, like I said. So I am very gently spreading this across, and after I get it applied thoroughly, I'm going to give it kind of a once over to make sure I don't have brush strokes. It doesn't look splotchy in certain parts, so I'll skip ahead and then you can see the rest. So there it is, finished, that piece. Now for the rest of them, I want these to be just a little bit lighter so they're not quite as dominant, so I will water down the antique wax just a little bit and go over the wreath. Doesn't take very long, just get that antique wax applied to it very gently so it's not too dark. I'm not going to go over this extra times. Set that aside, and then we're going to do both of the base pieces the same way. Once those are done, I decided I wanted to do the roof area a little bit darker. The yellow color was just standing out so dominantly, so I just took what was remaining of that antique wax in the sponge and went right over the yellow. If it had been too dark, I could have wiped it back off again with the paper towel, but this is what I liked because it gave it more of the look of hay, I think. So I'm just going to go over this a couple of times in a few areas. Some of those spots were a little bit light. Got it the way I wanted it, and then we're going to move on, and I want to also darken the background, the Oh Holy Night sheet music. And I still have just a tiny bit of the antique wax. We're just going to use what's in here and swipe over. Now this is going to help bring out some of the etched lines that have kind of faded a little bit from the paint that was applied. So I'm swiping over it. I don't want it quite that dark, so this time I am going to use that paper towel and basically blot it and swipe off the excess. See how it still kind of stained that paint a little bit, so it looks almost like parchment paper or just old sheet music. So I'm going to keep doing the same thing over the rest of it. Now some parts of it are going to look darker than others. If I want to even it out, I can get a wet wipe, a paper towel that's wet, something that's slightly damp, and be able to take a little bit of that back off. But I like how it's uneven. You're going to see this bottom section gets a little bit darker. It's starting to get that aged look. This is really coming together nicely. Now we're ready to just glue it all together. So I am using stick fast thick glue, and give not too much, but a good line of glue all the way across that roof line piece, and it lines up with the top edge of your back piece. All of those little cutouts should all line up. Once you get them even, then press it together. You'll want to work with it pretty quickly. It will set up within about 10-15 seconds. It'll start to set up. So get that lined up, press it down. There's a spot there or two that I must have had a wet spot on my hand and it pulled some of that wax off. So I'm just going to get a tiny bit of wax on that paper towel and dab it over those spots to blend them out. Sometimes you just kind of have to work with things. I wasn't very careful, but we're going to make it work. So we're going to touch up those spots, and it gives it a second for that roof to dry. Now we need to put the wreath on. Now pay attention to where it sits. You don't want to cover up the words, but you want it to be high enough. So just kind of play with it, figure out where you want it to be. And I'm going to put the glue on the back. Now I didn't need glue on that top part of the wreath. I wasn't thinking. I put it all the way up there at the top, but that extra glue, it just needed to dry, and then we could come back and stain the back of the wreath that's going to show up above. You really only need to put glue on the part of the wreath that's going to touch where that hay or thatched roof area is. So you see me kind of thinking about it. It's like, oh, wait a minute, that's too low. Got to slide it up a little bit, kind of get it back out of the way so you can read those words. There we go. And then press it down. I have a little extra glue there. I'm going to dab up and press it down so it will attach, and then set that aside, and we're going to put the base pieces together. I'm gluing the two raw sides together so that the underneath of the base will have the stained finish. You can use either side of that very bottom piece that you choose to. So I went ahead and put the glue on the upper piece and lined it up. Now this has quite a bit of glue, so it does take a little longer to set up, and it might slide around on you, so be very careful. Get it lined up and press it together. Mine actually kind of shifted a little bit, but it doesn't look too bad. I'm looking at it thinking, but we're gonna go with it. It looks fine. You will need to glue in the pieces that go into the base. The tabs on the bottom are not very long, and it is a pretty tall piece with some weight at the top of it. So I'm just making sure everything fits. I'm gonna put my stick fast down in the slot of the top piece of the base, and it will take a second or two. You'll have to hold on to the barn piece, I guess you call it, so that it will stand up straight. So give it a good 30 seconds to a minute of holding that in. And I've skipped ahead here so we can move on to, you can't see it, but the slots that are in front of it for the Holy Family piece. Apologize, my camera angle was not good, but there are two slots. I put the stick fast into those slots, and I did the same thing with the Holy Family piece, held that in place. Here's our finished Holy Family Nativity set. Appreciate you watching Created and All here on YouTube. You can see more tutorials like these over on Facebook. And if you want information about any of the supplies for this kit and the paints that I use, check the description of the video. I hope you have a great day.